My sister, Camilla, has always been taller by 3 inches and louder by 3 decibels. When we were kids, she used to race me to the curb whenever Dad yelled, "Last one to the car is a rotten banana." I was always the banana. She'd cackle, the kind of laugh you only see on cartoon villains, and then swing her long ponytail like a victory banner. It was never malicious exactly, just a constant, humming competition like fluorescent lights you stop noticing until they've been buzzing for hours and you suddenly realize you have a headache. So maybe it made cosmic sense that when Noah proposed, the first person to text me wasn't my fiancé, obviously, or my mother, who has been waiting to monogram everything I own since the ultrasound, or my best friend Tasha, who once rated 6 different cake tastings with a spreadsheet for fun. It was Camilla. The message came as a screenshot from my Instagram story, my left hand, starlit by the string lights of the diner where we'd first met, the ring oriented just so. Noah was in the corner of the shot, grinning and nervous. "Cute," she wrote, followed by a diamond emoji, then a gray dot that meant she was typing more. I braced the way you do before a sneeze. Is it from the prize machine at the grocery store? I've seen bigger on lollipops. I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed itself in pity. Beside me, Noah was talking too fast, the way he does when he's excited, about how he'd almost tripped on the curb outside the diner because he'd started crying. He kissed the back of my hand, my small ringed hand, and said, "I know it's not huge." "It's perfect," I said quickly, and meant it in the part of me that was 30% relief that the moment had happened, and 40% the buttery warmth of him, and 30% the memory of the ring. It had been my grandmother's fragment of a diamond, my grandmother who wore supermarket shoes and clipped coupons out of habit even when she had enough for the good olives. When she died, Mom tucked the ring away in a velvet pouch with a sachet of lavender. The diamond wasn't large. It wouldn't have been described as a diamond by a billboard. It was more like the idea of a diamond, a glint you learned to see when you knew where to look. Mom cried when I told her I wanted to use it. Noah cried when I said yes. Then he used his bonus from work to set it in a simple bezel, and he cried again when he picked it up, and the jeweler cried, though in fairness, she said she always cried for engagements because she was pathologically sentimental and also pregnant. My hand was still warm from Noah's lips when my phone buzzed again. "Don't worry," Camilla wrote. "I'm sure it means a lot. Minimalist chic winking face dot." I typed, deleted, typed, deleted. The night smelled like rain and melted chocolate from the diner's warm brownie sundae we'd inhaled. Finally, I wrote back, "It does mean a lot. Thanks." "Of course," she wrote. "When's the party?" There would be a party because in our family there were always parties. There had been a party for my first day of kindergarten and another for the day I stopped wearing my retainer. There were parties for birthdays that ended in 4, for promotions that came with free parking, for the time our cat successfully learned to sit on command because Dad had too many treats and nowhere to put them. I tucked my phone face down and looked at Noah. He looked stricken. "She hated it?" he asked without preamble. "She's Camilla," I said. "She hates anything that doesn't come with a brand ambassador." He huffed a laugh, my favorite sound. "Do you hate it?" "I love it," I said. The ring pressed gently into the little pillow of skin at the base of my finger. I did love it. I also hated that I now knew Camilla had already told 3 of her friends and had probably added a line about minimalist chic that would metastasize into a group chat joke. The engagement party was a week later at my parents' house, overflowing hydrangeas on the porch and my mother fluttering around with trays like a short, beautiful hummingbird. I wore a white sundress with pockets. People took turns saying, "Let me see," and I almost got used to the way eyebrows rose, just a fraction, just enough for latitude and longitude to shift. "Oh. It's so classic," one woman said. I filed "classic" next to interesting, the archive where compliments go to resign. Camilla arrived impossibly late in a linen jumpsuit, arms full of peonies that were not in season. She kissed my cheek and then held my hand up like a prop she was selling at an auction. "Oh, wow," she said. "It's very delicate." "It was Grandma's," I said, and watched her forearm soften. My grandmother had been everyone's grandmother. She had knitted all our blankets with patience that took the shape of rows. "Oh," she said in a different voice, and for a second it was exactly the right kind of silence. Then Tasha, who can read a room better than she can read a menu, swooped in and changed the subject to "Who's bringing what to bridal shower charades," which is a made-up tradition she insists will retire the bouquet toss forever. Someone put on a playlist of songs about cities because my parents like thematic background noise, and Dad sneaked Noah the good bourbon in the garage while promising not to give him advice, then offering a robust 5 minutes of advice. But the next morning, there it was on Instagram, Camilla, sunburnished and immaculate, holding a cappuccino bowl up to the camera. The caption was 3 lines about minimalism being a state of mind. Winking face. The location tag was my parents' house. It didn't mention me. It didn't have to. "Stop looking," Noah told me gently, and I sat on my hands. I am 26. I am not supposed to be someone who is undone by an emoji. And yet, it is not a crime to have a small engagement ring, I told myself. It is certainly not a crime to have a sentimental ring. If there is any justice, it might even be a virtue. But virtue is quiet, Camilla is not. 3 nights later, I lay on my stomach on our couch while the ceiling fan chopped the midsummer heat into slices we took turns standing in. On TV, 2 bakers competed to make edible versions of bridges. I was Googling lab-grown diamond versus mind, not because I wanted one, I told myself, but because I wanted to have facts ready the next time someone cocked their head at my hand and said, "Tiny." I learned about carat weight and vs clarity and color grades that turn diamonds into vegetables. D is eggplant stiff, E is softer zucchini. I learned that the price per carat for lab-grown can be half or less than mined for the same apparent quality. I learned that some women wore moissanite the way some women wore red lipstick, with a shrug that says, "I know what I like." Noah emerged from the kitchen with 2 bowls of cereal because neither of us could conceive of turning on the stove. "Are you," he said, peering at my screen, "shopping?" "No," I said, researching. "For a ring?" "For armor," I said, and closed the tab. He sat behind me, his legs bracketing my hips, spoon-tapping my bowl like a song. "I don't need you to armor up," he said softly. "I need you to be happy." "I am happy." He hesitated. "You're also browsing." "I'm also browsing," I conceded, and turned to kiss his knee. "It's only because Camilla said." "You don't have to finish that sentence." The next day I wrote an essay on my lunch break, the kind of thing I write when I am too mad to sit still. Writing is how I sort the junk drawer of my brain. I called it Ring Shaming and Other Tiny Crimes, and it began with a paragraph about my grandmother's lavender drawer and ended with a paragraph about how the value of a thing isn't the price someone else would pay for it, it's the story you tell every time you look at it. I posted it on a personal blog that has 12 readers, 11 of whom are my friends and one of whom is a Russian bot who posts kind offers for fake passports. Tasha shared it on Twitter because she is my hype person and her account is mildly influential among people who rate cake tastings with spreadsheets. By the time I got home, an editor at a lifestyle website had messaged me asking if I'd be willing to let them run it, and my phone was a slot machine. The website paid me $600 and told me in a very friendly email that 2 brands wanted to run ads alongside it because the engagement was surprisingly high for an essay about microaggressions and rocks. I didn't set out to turn my engagement into content capitalism. It turned itself. The essay trended for a day and a half. I got an email from a morning show that I politely declined because TV terrifies me more than sharing an elevator. My Venmo pinged with generous microdonations from strangers who wrote things like, "For the anti-Camillas of the world," and "This is for your wedding shoes." I didn't accept those, but I did accept an invitation to speak on a panel for young writers where I somehow emerged with a little honorarium and a tote bag. "You're trending," Camilla texted a few nights later. "Yikes," I wrote back. "You didn't have to write about me to get famous." "I didn't write about you." "Minimalism being a state of mind," she wrote. "That was about cups." I said, and then put the phone down. I need a social media break, I told Noah, and then proceeded not to take one. 2 weeks later, at the bridal salon, under lighting meant to flatter all decisions, Camilla perched on a velvet ottoman and observed me like a museum critic. I had tried on a dress for her, hoping it would turn her into the sister who cried at the right parts. It was simple, boat neck, sleeveless, the kind of white that looks like a good idea in photographs. I wasn't sure if it was mine yet. She tilted her head. It's classic, she said, and I laughed so hard I surprised us both. Classic like my ring? I said. She smiled at herself in the mirror. At least you're consistent. The attendant, who had told me her name 3 times because I insisted on forgetting it, materialized with a belt. Sometimes a little sparkle sells it, she said, and looped it around my waist. Oh, Camilla said involuntarily, which is how I knew she liked it. We left with a dress that felt like a good paragraph and without the belt because the sparkle had convinced me I didn't need it. In the car, the air conditioner breathed on high. I kept driving in silence until Camden Avenue, then, because interior monologues are terrible drivers, blurted, "Do you think my ring is embarrassing?" She didn't answer for a block. "I think," she said carefully, "that you are not someone who needs a big ring. Which is good, given the facts." "What facts?" "Your ring is small. But it's fine. Some brides are small ring girls. Like ballet flats." She looked out the window. "It's a vibe." "Cam," I said. "I love my ring. It was Grandma's." "Then that's what matters," she said, and changed the subject to color palettes, a slalom she took without noticing she'd left me at the top of the hill, skis sideways. That night, after 2 melty tacos and 1 ill-advised scroll through a comment section, I did something I am not especially proud of but am also unwilling to lie about. I shopped. I had no intention of buying anything. I clicked and compared and thought, academically, about sizes. I learned that 1-carat diamonds average about 6.5 millimeters across. 2 carats are around 8 millimeters. 5 carats are ridiculous. I added filters that said lab-grown and ethical and sparkly as midnight in a jewelry store. I tried on a few with the augmented reality hand feature until my thumb looked like a magician's assistant. And then I found it. It was a cushion cut pressed into a low setting like a moon settling into horizon. The stone, lab-grown, offset by the jeweler's proud note about carbon footprint, was absurd. It was patience obliterating. The price made me say, "Oh," in a tone I can only describe as both aspiration and nausea. I added it to cart, because adding things to carts is free. I removed it, because it was not. I ate a grape. I added it again. Then I opened my savings account, stared, closed it, and opened the account where the essay money and the honorarium and a surprisingly generous freelance check from a brand who'd asked me to write about objects and values lived. It was more than I'd had last month. It was not enough for the moon. "You okay?" Noah asked from the kitchen, where he was listening to a podcast about urban canoeing, a hobby he did not have. "Yep." I lied. Tasha texted a meme. My mother texted a photo of my grandmother, age 20, holding up her left hand in black and white, a blur where the ring should be. "She would be over the moon," Mom wrote. "She always said you were sunlight in sneakers." And then, because the universe has a sense of timing, an email pinged. It was from that lifestyle site. They wanted to commission a follow-up because brands were frothing at the mouth to sponsor authentic wedding content. Their phrase, not mine. The pay was, well, it was half a moon. I called Tasha. "Do I write a sequel?" "As your friend," Tasha said, "I say take their money. As a principled reader of your work, I say take their money. As a bridesmaid who has to buy a dress, I say take their money. I could," I said slowly, "buy something ridiculous. Purely to prove that I can buy something ridiculous. And then write about it." "Revenge consumerism," she said. "I'm listening." I could walk into Camilla's house and make the sunlight shatter. Better, Tasha said, you could walk into your life and make your sister's comments irrelevant. Or, I said, and disliked the sour triumph rising like a tide, I could do both. When I hit purchase, the website flashed confetti. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling. Through the wall, Mr. Singh sneezed with his usual flourish. Noah walked in, took one look at my face, and sank onto the couch. Tell me, he said. I did. It's lab-grown, I concluded, and, okay, it cost more than Camilla pays on her mortgage every year. He blinked. You know how much her mortgage is? Roughly, I said, and then, because we had promised each other honesty even when it made us weird, added, I know exactly. Leah. I'm not proud. He rubbed his thumb into his eyebrow. You're going to break the internet. I won't post it, I said. It's for me. Is it? I paused. Not entirely. He took my hands. I love you, he said. With your ring the size of a snowflake, with a ring the size of a doorknob, with no ring at all. But you don't owe anyone a performance. I know, I said. But I might enjoy it anyway. The ring arrived in a box the size of a meringue. I didn't even take a photo. This was the greatest restraint I have ever shown. I told exactly 3 people, Noah, who was resigned, Tasha, who demanded video, and my mother, who said, "Is this a rental?" in a voice that suggested she felt the ground move. "It's lab-grown," I said, like an amulet. "Do you love it?" she asked. "I love that I can love it without measuring that love against anyone else," I said, which would have been noble if true. The bridal shower was at Camilla's, because she has a backyard that looks like a lifestyle blog. There were jars of lemonade with herbs floating like shipwreck survivors and napkins that matched the string of paper lanterns. She wore a gauzy dress and a smirk that said she was determined to be generous today. I arrived in a dark sundress and the ring, my left hand suddenly a character actor. Her eyes snapped to it as if she'd been trained by a jeweler's laser. "Oh," she said, with honest awe, "the kind you bring to baby animals and high art. You, upgraded." "Kind of," I said. "Kind of." She tilted my hand this way and that. The stone put on a show. Somewhere, an airplane rerouted. "Leah, that's lab-grown," I said quickly. "So it's not like I." "Leah," she said again, but in a voice that belonged to someone else. There are moments when the room goes quiet even though the playlist has not changed and the children still have icing on their faces. The chatter dimmed around the edges. Tasha, from across the lawn, mimed zipping her lips and swallowing the key. My mother arrived, gaze bright, and kissed me. "You look beautiful," she whispered. "Your grandmother would say it is too big and then sneak it into her sweater." Camilla swallowed and found her center again. "It's very ambitious," she pronounced. "Better than classic," Tasha stage whispered nearby. A woman I barely knew asked how many carats it was, and I said, "Enough carats for a salad," which is the kind of joke people make when they are thinking about money and vanity at the same time. The day unfolded. We played the charades game Tasha invented. I cried at a card with "Right Vows" on it. There were photos. There was a cake shaped like a stack of books because I had had exactly one opinion, and it was that I wanted frosting to taste like butter and the cake to look like my bookshelf. Camilla hovered beside me for a while and then didn't, and I realized she was in a mood I couldn't parse. At the end of the afternoon, she came up behind me on the porch, where I was taking exactly one breath without smiling. "Walk?" she said, and I followed her to the side yard where the hydrangeas sulked in the heat. "Is it petty to say it's too big?" she asked. I stared. "You told me mine was too small." She exhaled. "Yes. And that wasn't generous of me. But this one is, Leah, it's enormous." I laughed. "That's the point. I have a voice that is usually oatmeal, warm, reliable, unthreatening. It came out steel." Her eyes were wet suddenly. "You're mad at me." You've been mad since the cappuccino. I'm mad, I said carefully, that you can't seem to let me be sincere without grating me. She looked at my hand again, as if the angle might change the argument. I tease, she said. We tease. It's how we talk. Teasing is a flavor, I said. It's not a food group. She sat on the step and folded her knees up, a perfect swoop of linen. Do you know, she said, that when you posted your essay I got 50 jokes from people I thought were friends? People sent me rings and tiny emojis and goops. It felt like all the times people told me my house was nice but too far out, or that my dress was beautiful but brave for the office, or that my life looks perfect. It's not. It took me a second to find where to put that. Do you know, I said, that when you posted the cappuccino caption, I got 30 DMs asking if we were okay? She nodded. I thought it would land as, Camilla being Camilla. It did. And now? She asked, gesturing to the ring. And now I'm being Leah being petty, I said. Which is not as fun as a brand. She laughed in surprise. You didn't, she said, and then, because she is who she is, where did you even? Lab-grown, I said again, as if repetition could make it lighter. And I wrote something that did well. They gave me money. I added some, and now I can wear this poor moon and feel like the tide. Behind us, a child shrieked with glee and someone popped a balloon and someone else yelled, It's okay, it's okay. I saw our mother through the screen door, stacking plates with the kind of industry that means she's thinking of her own mother. It is a strange loop, families, a ring, a caption, a party, a pulled thread revealing a sweater's shape. Can I be honest? Camilla asked, and at my nod, continued. I'm jealous. Not of the ring. Of you. You always seem like you're sitting on the right bench. Even when you mess up, people forgive you. Even when you do nothing, people like you. I have to announce myself. I like you without announcements, I said, and in that second we became the girls we had been, sharing a lollipop on the curb because she'd decided the flavor was weird. She wiped under one eye. I mocked your ring because it was small and because I was being a jerk and because the week before my mortgage broker told me our rate was going up and I didn't know who to take it out on, and because it's easier to punch down than to say I'm scared. Your rate is going up. I repeated, stupid with lack of context. And I might have to move in 2 years, she said, voice thin. I shouldn't have bought something so big. It was a mistake. I put so much of myself in, sighs. I looked at my hand. The diamond was shameless. We both did, I said. The next day, the plumber called my mother to say that the restaurant, our family restaurant, which had survived recessions and Yelp and the specific curse of the corner booth, had a leak that had become a problem. The kind of problem, he told Dad, that requires a check with a comma. Dad sat in a chair and squeezed the arm until the nearest would register a complaint. Mom didn't tell me until the evening because she knows I worry like a hobby. We'll figure it out, she said, hands moving as if she could arrange numbers the way she arranges napkins, just so, until they are symmetrical enough to soothe. It's just bad timing. After that phone call, I went into our bedroom and opened the box with the moon. Don't, Noah said, leaning against the doorframe. You don't even know what I'm going to do, I said, and he raised his eyebrows in a way that meant, I know exactly. I can return it, I said. I can get most of it back. You don't owe your parents your showpiece, he said gently. It's not a showpiece, I said, it's a plot point. I held it in my palm. And I owe them everything. He crossed the room, took my face in his hands. You owe them being their daughter, he said. But if this makes you feel good, do it. If you're only doing it because you feel like you have to play the good one while your sister plays the other one, don't. We're not archetypes. I put the ring down on the dresser, beside a mug full of pens and a hair tie I'd been missing. I said nothing and did the math in my head that you do when money arrives, like an opportunity to be moral. You can buy the ring and then return it and still be strong. Are you okay? I'm okay, I wrote. I just need my grandmother's ring again. I drove to my parents and handed my mother the box. She blinked at it, looked up at me, and then nodded once, not because she wanted the money but because she wanted me to be the kind of person who made choices we could live with. We added my freelance check. Dad called the plumber. Somewhere, secretly, privately, he cried like he always does when money is a question he can't answer with brute force. I kept the moon for another week, because the return shipping label got lost in a shuffle of catalogs and because, maybe, I wanted one more day with performance. I wore it to the grocery store and to the coffee shop and once, hand in mine with Noah, down the sidewalk at dusk. I didn't post it. I looked at it in lamps and in the bright light of passing cars and in the shadow of a movie theater. On a Tuesday, I packed it carefully and took it to UPS. The clerk flirted with me twice and then said, "Oh." I didn't notice the ring, which reminded me that life is merciful. When I got home, I slipped my grandmother's ring onto my finger. I breathed. I made dinner. I slept. I didn't tell Camilla. The thing about stories is that they demand a moment where secrets crash together and everyone gets wet. Ours came on a Saturday morning when I took my mother to Camilla's to help her organize what she called the cupboard of despair, the kitchen cabinet where old lids and mismatched bowls convene. We sat on the floor and made 3 piles: keep, donate, throw. My mother held up a plastic margarita glass that said Fiesta in peeling letters and said, "I remember this," in a voice like a sigh. Camilla walked in, hair in an elastic, face clean of everything but herself, and handed us iced tea sticky with mint. "Thanks for helping," she said. "I hate doing this alone. It makes me feel like I'm bad at living." She looked at my hand, at the grandmother ring glinting like a secret understood. Something hit her face then, the realization that she had misread a page and the book continued anyway. "You returned it," she said. I nodded. "Did you, because of me?" "Because of Dad's restaurant," I said. "Because of," it felt like a hat that made me walk differently. "Because of me." She sat and put her head on my shoulder in a way she hadn't done since I had braces and she had braces, and we both smiled oddly in photos. "You always were smarter," she said into my sleeve. "No," I said. "Just older in the part where consequences live." She laughed, and then in the next beat, she cried, hard and suddenly, tears like a faucet. I put my arm around her and let her be small, the way she never allowed herself. Mom crawled over and put her palm on Camilla's shin and hummed the song she had hummed my whole life for bumps and bruises and the grief of misfiled taxes. "I'm scared," Camilla said into the space between my arm and the floor. "I'm scared of being someone who made the wrong choices loudly." "Everyone does," Mom said. "The trick is to apologize with volume and then adjust." So we made a plan that looked like a messy spreadsheet and felt like hope. Camilla would call her mortgage broker and switch to bi-weekly payments temporarily to ease cash flow. She would stop buying plants that died in our climate and then feel guilty. This was more detail than was necessary but felt correct. She would come to the restaurant on Saturday nights to host when we were short-staffed and earn in tips what she called humility points. She would, she promised, not post any captions that read like subtweets. She would try to ask me questions before making pronouncements. I would, Tasha insisted on this clause, stop buying jewelry as a form of therapy. Noah put his hand up and said, "She never does that," and Tasha said, "I'm speaking to future Leah," and he blushed like the sweet man he is. I would write what I needed to write and spend the money like the person who had written it. I would buy my wedding shoes with cash and without guilt. The wedding came like the tide, inexorable, predictable, beautiful. Everything that could have gone wrong shrugged and didn't. The dress felt like a sentence I had been writing quietly for years. My shoes were blue. The flowers were hydrangeas from my parents' yard, cut in the morning with an apology to the bush. I wore my grandmother's ring, and the chain of a tiny gold charm around my neck, an anchor the size of half a fingernail. At the altar, our friend the officiant said that love was neither minimalist nor maximalist. It was not a brand. It was a practice. I looked out at the faces, my mother damp-eyed, my father biting his lips so hard the photographer would have to edit, Tasha winking, Camilla holding a bouquet like a truce. Noah's hand was warm in mine. We said vows. We cried. The cake tasted like butter. The DJ played the song we danced to on the kitchen rug that winter afternoon when we decided this was a good idea and that we were going to be stubborn about joy. There is an alternate version of our life where I kept the moon. In that story, some people would be impressed and others would be meaner in quiet rooms. I might have told more jokes in the captions, and I might have become a person who polishes her jewelry when she is anxious. We would still have gotten married, still have eaten cake, still have returned home to a bed made with sheets that felt like a promise. But in this version, the one where my ring is small, I notice it more. I turn my hand without thinking in the morning and the sun hits the bezel and I think of my grandmother's lavender drawer. I think of the way she would have rolled her eyes at everything and then made a casserole. I think of the day at Camilla's, our 3 bodies in a wedge on the floor like a lesson. I think of the restaurant and the corner booth and the way my father hums when someone leaves a big tip and how I will never be able to calculate value properly again. And Camilla? A year in, she still sometimes sends me listings for houses she cannot afford, followed by skull emojis, and I sometimes send her links to lab-grown gems shaped like hearts, followed by dramatic sighs. She came with us on our honeymoon for 3 days, a third will who can cook, she declared, and then left behind a note that said, "Thanks for letting me love you," in the room next door. Sometimes she slips and posts something that isn't kind and then texts me, "Delete," and I text back, "Delete," and she does. One night in late fall, we all stood in the restaurant kitchen at closing, the lights high and honest, the floor clean, the air full of garlic and the sound of the dishwasher doing its work. Dad counted the register with the satisfaction of a man who kept something from sinking. Noah wiped his hands on a towel and handed me a slice of lemon tart someone had forgotten, the texture's perfect, crumb, silk, shine. Camilla popped in from the front, hair in a knot, cheeks flushed, smile real. "Some couple just asked if you were the writer from the essay," she told me. I said, "She's my sister." And they said, "She's lucky." And I said, "I know." Later, on the walk to the car, Camilla slipped her arm through mine. "You know," she said, looking at my left hand, which was not a moon but was my ring, "I was wrong about small." "You were wrong about a lot of things," I said, and she laughed with me, which was how I knew we were a new kind of right. We stopped under the streetlight and watched a moth beat itself silly against brightness. Noah went ahead to start the car. Camilla tilted her head. "If I ever get married," she said, "I want you to pick my ring." "I'll pick something classic," I said gravely, and she shoved me lightly with her hip. As we drove home, Noah set the radio to the late-night jazz station, the one that sounds like a city from the 50s even though our city is new and constantly changing. I held my hand up and watched the little stone catch the traffic lights, red, yellow, green, like it was learning to be a signal. There will always be people measuring things. There will always be scales you didn't know you were standing on. There will always be your own worst version of yourself waiting for confetti. I am not saintly enough to swear off pettiness entirely. Sometimes I still compose the perfect clapback in my head and admire it a second too long before release. But mostly I like the quiet of my ring. I like the way it is a story, the first one I heard about love, told by a woman who made soup that could undo sorrow and scolded in a way that felt like a nap, and who would have looked at a 5-carat moon on my hand and said, lovingly, "Take that off. It's ridiculous. It looks like you're wearing a doorknob." The day after our wedding, we stopped by my parents to pick up the Tupperware parade and some flowers. My grandmother's lavender drawer smelled faintly of thyme. I stuck my head in, literally, and breathed until my lungs knew how to be lungs again. Camilla came over that afternoon with a photo printed in a square, me and Noah and her, faces smashed together, sun in our hair. On the back she had written, in big messy letters, "Love is neither minimalist nor maximalist. It's generous. And sometimes a little petty." I taped it inside my closet where I keep the good sweaters. Every morning when I reach for one, I see it. I put on my ring and go stir our life like a pot, adding salt until it tastes like us. Years later, when the restaurant has survived another small apocalypse, when Noah has learned to like olives, when Tasha has a kid who calls me Aunt Ring, we are at a family picnic. The hydrangeas are larger now because plants, like people, benefit from being trimmed back occasionally. They grow sideways and out with a stubborn kind of gratitude. Camilla's hair is shorter, her laughter lower. She has a dog who thinks love is a lap. My mother hums while we shell peas. Dad checks the grill like it's a fleet. A cousin of a cousin leans over and takes my hand the way women do, thumb gentle, reverent. I love your ring, she says sincerely. Thank you, I say. It was my grandmother's. Oh, she says, and there it is, the right kind of silence. Camilla is across the yard, and when I look up, she looks at me. We've developed a shorthand that wasn't in our childhood kit, a nod that says we know we can do worse and we can do better, and we are practicing both less and less. I blow her a kiss. She mimes catching it. She mimes, because she can't help herself, putting it into a velvet pouch, tucking it away with lavender. And when I turn back to the table, someone has placed a new dish in front of me, something bright and buttery. I take a forkful. It tastes like a story we will tell. It tastes like we are done buying our value, and are ready, finally, to inherit it. The end.